It's the Sittin Sportside podcast, exclusively on 1045theteam.com.
And welcome into the Sittin Sportside podcast. I'm Eric Hanneman, bringing you yet another Major League Baseball division preview. And today, of all days, your 1045 The Team is your home for New York sports, and 1045theteam.com brings you the Sittin Sportside podcast. And this is the American League East division preview. Can't wait to give you my division preview of the American League East here. Of course, last season included the Yankees and Red Sox in the playoffs, and of course the defending champion. Now you could say, terrible to hear that, Yankee fans, right? But defending champion, Boston Red Sox. Both Yankees and Red Sox 100-win teams last year. Yankees were barely 100 wins exactly, while the Red Sox won 108 on their way to the championship, beating the Yankees in the ALDS after the Yankees beat the Oakland Athletics in the wild card game at Yankee Stadium, the second consecutive year that the Yankees won the wild card game at Yankee Stadium. Of course, the rest of the division, Tampa Bay Rays, 90 wins last year, surprising to many. I think that, people didn't expect them to get to 90. I kind of thought they were a 500 type team, but 90 wins, 18 games over 500, very impressive, but still finished 10 games out of the Yankees and 18 out of the Sox. Toronto Blue Jays 73-89 last year, and then the worst team of all of baseball, the Baltimore Orioles, abysmal year, 47-115, finishing 61 games out of the Boston Red Sox in first place. Let's get down to business. We're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and starting off with the division winner, I am going with, of course, maybe a little biased, Red Sox fans. I'm sorry, but I'm going with my New York Yankees this season. I like what the Yankees have done. They have depth at every single position, including starting pitcher now with the signing of Gio Gonzalez. I think that even though you're not going to have Luis Severino or CC Sabathia for the first month, Domingo Germán has proven that he can be serviceable last year, and then he's looked very good in spring training. So I got to say that the Yankees have depth everywhere throughout their entire team. Problem is, if you lose everybody, then the depth gets worse and worse and worse. And if Aaron Hicks' injury is worse than it is, then, and Severino and Betances and Sabathia's, all these injuries come back to bite you. So they're going to come back. These are the immense talents on the team that you really, really need to make them the elite team that they are. So even though I think this team has enough depth, of course, to go a month without many of these players, the good news is, and I'm knocking on wood a million times, that these aren't serious injuries per se, that we're looking at them and saying, you know what, they're probably not going to, make it for half the year. Of course, Didi Gregorius has had that kind of stigma on him. I made a bold prediction at the beginning of 2019 as my 5 2019 bold predictions. That's up on 1045theteam.com. That the Didi Gregorius will make its debut in May. And if you look at past Tommy John recipients, and Zach Kozart's the one I kind of go back to, I think he got his Tommy John surgery in August and was ready by March, spring training of the next year, which is a total of 7 months. And Didi got his Tommy John in October. He had 7 months there, and that's right around May. So I think the Yankees will probably be patient with Didi, though, because they have the luxury to be patient with Didi Gregorius coming back from his injury. So while I probably will be wrong on that bold prediction, I think that Didi will be back sooner rather than later. A lot of people are saying around the All-Star break. I think at the latest it should be June, but who knows? He's going to be out half the year. But if you get Didi back, I think, Aaron Hicks, of course, in center field, I think he needs to be okay. But, he got that cortisone shot. He said he feels fine. Hopefully that sticks out the year. Judge is going to need to stay on the field, something that he couldn't do last season. Sanchez has been injured throughout his career. But mainly you need Sanchez to be better. You need him to hit better on average. You need him to up the home runs too. You need Stanton to be better in April and September, because he was bookended by really bad plays. Terrible start to the year. We remember how he was getting booed at the beginning of last season, and then I think he wasn't that great down the stretch for the Yankees. But really good in the middle. You can't minimize the type of seasons Giancarlo Stanton had. He probably, behind Andujar, was their most consistent hitter throughout the entire year. The best hitter on the team for sure is still Aaron Judge, in my opinion. But Andujar was probably the best hitter of the entire season if you put it all in a whole, and Stanton was number 2 because Judge was off the field for as long as he was. let's talk a little bit about Brett Gardner. I think the expectation about Brett Gardner for me is that he should be the fourth outfielder look, last year he was the fourth outfielder when Andrew McCutchen was getting the starts in left field. I think Clint Frazier should have the opportunity to get that. Not a great spring training. He's still recovering himself from where he was at the end of last season with the concussion problems, and I think that he's definitely going to be starting probably for service time too the year for a long time, maybe a month or so in the minor leagues. But if another injury happens, I think you got to go defense over Stanton consistently out there and have Clint Frazier up at some point. And I think the essential lineup for the Yankees would have Clint Frazier in the lineup somewhere. I think he's probably your best leadoff hitter, though, with the speed that he has. Of all the people on the roster, on the 40-man, I would probably lean towards Frazier. I'm not even sure it's that much of a debate that he is the best and the fastest player on the team. So I really think Frazier needs to take over at left field. But Gardner, I think, can be consistent, but he's your number 9 hitter. I think as long as Hicks is healthy, he's probably number 1. And then if Hicks is injured, I think you got to get creative at the top of that order. Maybe you go Judge. Maybe you put Glaber there. I don't know. I think Brett Gardner should probably stick in the 9 hole when he is in the lineup. But when it comes down to it, I think at the very least you need to have a platoon maybe with Stanton out there versus lefties and righties. Gardner's out there, and when Stanton's out there, of course you can DH whoever you want. Maybe you DH Sanchez and catch Romine. Maybe you DH Greg Bird. But the problem is, if you're DHing somebody and putting Stanton out there and left, that's a lefty, and Greg Bird's also a lefty. So maybe you put DJ LeMahieu in the lineup and keep Troy Tulowitzki at shortstop, and you DH Andujar. So there's a lot of options. Like I said, the depth is great, and that's why I love the acquisition of DJ LeMahieu. He can play anywhere. You're probably not playing him at short, because if you play him, if you're putting him in the lineup over Tulowitzki, you're probably moving Glaber Torres to short and playing LeMahieu at his natural second base, and he's one of the best defensive second basemen in all of baseball. But he also can play first base. His bat has been good, but that could have the Colorado boost, of course. But I love LeMahieu. I think Andujar is going to build off a big season last year as long as he can continue to hit doubles. Tulowitzki, I think, is going to have not as big a resurgence as many people might want him to have, but it's going to be big enough to be an impact at the bottom 3 in this lineup, because I don't think Tulowitzki is hitting above 7 or 8. So when I look at this team, I say there's a lot of, Judge is going to have another great year. I think Stanton can take another step forward. If Luke Voit can continue what he did in September, that's a lot of great things. But then you have the hope that Greg Bird can do something even if Voit doesn't pan out. And if Bird doesn't pan out either, you still have DJ LeMahieu who you can slide into there. When Didi comes back, he slots in the shortstop. But if not, you still have Troy Tulowitzki there. So you have so many options for the Yankees, and it just, I think for the offense, to wrap it up, needs to get a better season out of Gary Sanchez. There's no doubt about that. They need to have a really consistent year out of Gary. I know it's not easy to say, but look, if he has the type of season that he had, I'll even say 17. I don't even want to talk about the second half of 2016. That was just too good to be true, probably, for him, and he's consistent. But if he can have a little bit better, hit a few more home runs and hit more consistent for average, this offense is going to be really, really good for sure. Moving forward to the pitching, like I said, Gio Gonzalez, I think, is solid depth for this team. I love Domingo Germán. And honestly, Jonathan Loaiza could be a big part of this team as well if he shows what he can do in the minor leagues and get a little bit better there. And you still have Luis Cessa for the really, really big depth. And then even Jordan Montgomery, halfway through the year, probably should be ready to make an impact. Maybe I'm being too optimistic there. But Severino needs to come back. I expect actually a really good year out of Tanaka. I think he'll a lot of people are very walk on eggshells around their opinions on Tanaka, but I do believe that Masahiro Tanaka is going to have a really good year with this team. Let me talk about the relief pitching here, and if you've been annoyed by the background, I apologize for that. The music and the way it has been playing. We will fix that right about now. But if that bothered you throughout the Yankee segment, I really apologize. But we're going to continue and move on from here as we continue here on the 104.5 The Team Sittin Sportside podcast. The music will eventually make its way back in, but we will continue, like I said. And let's talk about the bullpen real quick. That's the last part about the team. A really good bullpen. If Dellin Betances eventually makes his way back, I really believe that, you know what I mean? This is one of the best bullpens. If they broke the bank for Craig Kimbrell, which they won't, and he won't sign a one-year deal, but I was kind of joking that this is a team that could possibly make it so that they make it so that they could have different like as long as their starters go 5 or 6 games, right? Or 5 or 6 innings, excuse me, that you could have like different sets of relievers for every game. Like you can go 7, 8, 9 with Ottavino, Betances, Chapman, and then the next day you go Green, Britton, Kimbrel. But obviously not going to sign Kimbrel. Get Kimbrel out of your heads. I'm sorry. I'm probably taunting Red Sox fans right now. We'll get to that in just a second here. But really good bullpen. Jonathan Holder's a great, player, pitcher. Chad Green, I mentioned them all. Britton back. Ottavino really good too to replace Robertson. And if Betances comes back, you already know the type of things that he can do. So this is still a really good bullpen. I also want to mention Tommy Kahnle. If Tommy Kahnle can be anything that he was 2 seasons ago, you're talking about like this bullpen would just be really, really good. So I have a lot of faith in the Yankee bullpen. So enough said about the Yankees. I have them coming in first place. Because this is a well-rounded team. The depth is everywhere. And a really good bullpen. And I think a rotation that's going to take a step forward. I didn't mention Paxton or Happ, but I really expect them to be really, really good pieces of this rotation, especially Paxton, because he has been a really good pitcher in his career. Some people might not notice. He's not Sale, but he can be the next tier down for the Yankees for sure this season, and maybe be their best pitcher overall in the year. Coming in second place is the defending champion, of course, Boston Red Sox. This is a team that brings back Chris Sale. They bring back Porcello, Price, and also bring back postseason hero Nathan Eovaldi. So the rotation is really good. Without Eduardo Rodriguez being the sneaky one that also could be really, really good this year. So their rotation is definitely better than the Yankees. Like don't act like I was saying that the Yankee rotation could be better than the Red Sox. I don't. Even though I expect the Yankee rotation to be better than many people are kind of like losing their minds of, oh my God, this rotation's not that good. Like, it's an okay rotation of the Yankees, but the best rotation, of course, in the American League East is definitely rotation-wise. And we can talk about the Rays and their way they deal with things. But rotation-wise, this is clearly the best rotation in the American League East. Chris Sale brings it up immensely. He's the best pitcher in probably the American League. And Eddie Rodriguez, if he comes in and pitches what he can do, he could be the number 2 at some point this year. I truly believe that. And then David Price is a pretty darn good 3 if that ends up being the case. So enough said about the rotation, and there's not much else you need to really say about the offense. I think Devers, a lot of people expecting Rafael Devers to take another step forward. Mookie Betts is the MVP, one of the best hitters in all of baseball. He could probably be argued with Mike Trout as the best player in all of baseball. But Trout probably takes that for me. But Betts is right there. JD Martinez back at the DH position. Jackie Bradley Jr. in center field, really good defensively. Alex Cora stuck with him for all of last year, even though he had the hitting struggles, but he's seen a specialist throughout the summer, and his swing has changed. He believes for definitely the better. So this is a really good Red Sox team that could, Andrew Benintendi, Mitch Moreland. They bring back World Series MVP Steve Pearce. If Pedroia can give them anything at second base, at the very least, the leadership that he could bring, and Brock Holt or Eduardo Nunez filling in the midterm. And then, of course, Xander Bogaerts and then Sandy Leon behind the plate. Rafael Devers, as I mentioned real quick, though, they expect him to take a really big step forward this season. So if he's really, really good, this is another really, really good offense. Where this team kind of goes wrong a little bit is the bullpen. There's a lot of worry about the bullpen, and I think rightfully so when you lose Craig Kimbrel, your closer. And even though Kimbrel could not get really the ball in the strike zone consistently last year in the playoffs, I still think this team needs one more reliever, because I don't think Matt Barnes, Ryan Brazier, Brian Workman, Heath Hembry are going to be able to do it enough. Hector Velasquez, he's okay. Tyler Thornburg never really panned out in the Travis Shaw deal. Maybe he can bring a big part of this. He was a closer at one point in his career back in Milwaukee. So there's hope, but they still need that one more reliever. I know that's a lot of hate for this bullpen, but I think we're all worried about it, rightfully so. So if you're a Red Sox fan, I'm sure that's the part of the team that you're like, we need to definitely get better. And unless Dombrowski all of a sudden breaks the bank, then you're not going to have Kimbrel. And that being said, you also didn't spend any money on any other reliever. So Dombrowski said, I'm not paying money for a reliever. And that's just the case that the team is at right now, and we'll see what happens if they go out and trade for someone at the deadline. I think probably Matt Barnes is the closer, but look, even if Kimbrel does sign, he probably won't be ready for a couple of weeks into the season, so it's not looking good for the Red Sox there. At this point, you're not going to break the bank for him if you've held out this long, but if you get him on that one-term deal, I remember Steven Drew came back and signed with the Red Sox at one point for like $11 million. At the beginning of the season, so that was a pretty good price. That was a while back. And look, I think that they need to get another pitcher. Of course, everyone's going to believe that in relief pitcher, just like the Yankees. People believe they need another starter, even with Gio Gonzalez. They always need more. Like, every team always needs more, but I think this is a legitimate concern for the Red Sox. You definitely need probably one more, especially if you're making a postseason run. I'm not even just talking regular season here, because this is a team that has offense is good enough, and the starting pitchers, actually, quite frankly, are good enough too to get you enough wins to make the playoffs. It's going to be in the playoffs where we're like, are we going to have to rely on Sale? We're going to have to rely on Eduardo Rodriguez if you're a Red Sox fan in the playoffs. You're going to need to rely on Nathan Eovaldi again. So there's that backbone. There's that backup plan. But maybe it's more of a concern in the regular season than I'm letting on. And I think it's something they're going to have to address at some point. But Red Sox, once again, are going to be a good team this year. I just have the Yankees finally coming in first place for the first time in a while, which, Red Sox fans are probably laughing at me like, ha, we own this division. And it's true, you have owned it recently, but it's going to be a nice rivalry again this year. Moving on, Tampa Bay Rays coming in third place for the second consecutive year. I might have the exact same 5. Really good team. I think this is an underrated team. I think the Red Sox and Yankees are both kind of worried about this squad. Kevin Cash really knows how to manage that bullpen. Right now, you only have 3 people that are locked into rotation spots. Blake Snell, Charlie Morton, and Tyler Glasnow, while maybe not locked into the playoffs or to the rotation spot, because if he struggles, maybe they just go with openers. But the rest are going to be openers, and they have some young pitchers that can come back. You have Jose De Leon, you have Brent Honeywell, who are starters. Who knows how they're going to bring those guys back, if they come back at all this year in the major leagues. But this is where we're at right now, the Tampa Bay Rays. It's Blake Snell, American League Cy Young Award winner. Charlie Morton, a really good year last year. In his last 2 years in the major leagues, as he announced he'll probably retire after his contract gets up. And Tyler Glasnow, a guy who didn't pan out in Pittsburgh, but once again, another Pittsburgh pitcher that leaves Ray Searage, a really good pitching coach, but all of a sudden becomes the prospect that he was supposed to. And so I have a lot of confidence in those 3. You add the opener possibilities with Ryan Yarbrough as a long reliever, and Yanni Chirinos, and then any of the 2 guys that I mentioned before. Jalen Beeks is actually the guy I got from the Red Sox. For Eovaldi, I think Beeks can be a really good, what do they call it? Next man up. Then the right after. There's a term for it, I think. That comes in after the opener. It's called a reliever, but it's the long reliever. So we'll call so they have some good options there, but it's the unconventional way that I think people are looking at. Moving forward, Tommy Pham, Kevin Kiermaier, Austin Meadows. In the outfield, I think Meadows, another guy you got in that Pittsburgh Pirates deal for Chris Archer. I think you got a really good return if you're the Rays. So there's a lot to like about this outfield. Tommy Pham is an MVP candidate, I think, off the bat. I mean, look, it sounds crazy to say, but I think he could have a big year for this Rays. Finished the season last year really, really well. So I do think Tommy Pham, well, maybe that's a little far to call him an MVP candidate. He's their best hitter, in my opinion, and he can do really good things for him. Across the infield, Matt Duffy's an underrated player at third base. He's probably not going to be this big-time slugger, but he can get on base with the singles. That's all you really need out of guys who can hit the top of the lineup. Joey Wendell was pretty good last year, the forgotten man in the Rookie of the Year race last season in the American League. Yandy Diaz, they traded Jake Bauers. It was peculiar why they did that. Don't necessarily know why, but I know that they have Yandy Diaz, and they expect him to take a step forward at first base with Ji-Man Choi as the designated hitter. And then Willie Adames, another guy who looks to take a step forward after his rookie year at shortstop. So they have a lot of good pieces on the offense as well that can do really well, centered around Tommy Pham. They also trade for catcher Mike Zunino. So there's a lot to like about this team all over the place. I think there's still lack a name player, which is why this team is what it is. Like, Blake Snell might be making himself a household name. If you win another Cy Young, of course you will. But at the same time, you're going to rely on Chaz Rowe and Jose Alvarado in the bullpen, and Diego Castillo, Ryan Stanek, whether they're at the front as an opener, or they're closing, or they're pitching in the 7th or 8th, you're going to be relying a lot on this bullpen as well. So I like what they have all over the place. I think Kevin Cash is able to manage this team. This is going to be a team that's going to be in the race for the entire year. I do think it's a 3-team race. I think the Yankees and Red Sox are definitely a notch above the Rays, but I actually do expect this to be a race between these 3 teams. I really do. I think that the Yankees and Red Sox will distance themselves probably mid-August, but don't be surprised if this is a 3-team race to the All-Star break, and then maybe right after that is when things get the better teams distance themselves. But I like the Rays a lot, as you can tell, as I'm putting them in the same discussion. You know, I may have made some some really bold statements, but we're in this discussion right now. I look at this as another team that's going to possibly be a 90-plus win team, 93, 94, could be 95. So this is going to be a good team this year, the Tampa Bay Rays. Let's go to the fourth-place team in Toronto Blue Jays. Don't have much to say about them. Let's talk about the positives. Is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a really exciting player, and he can really be a big part of this team. And I think that he will at some point, but he's got a little bit of an oblique. I believe he's an oblique injury right now. He'll be out for a good amount of time, and it's actually probably the best thing for him. Let me rephrase that. It's not good that he's injured, but there's not going to be as much controversy right now around the service time, because once he comes back, you rehab a little bit in the minor leagues, and the whole service time issue is no longer a factor. You're up in the major leagues, and you're starting wherever you're starting, whether you're starting at third base, you're DHing, you're starting in the outfield. I think he might just be the DH. I have no idea where they're going to put him for sure. He's a third baseman down there, but Brandon Drury as the third base guy. They brought in Freddie Galvis to play short. I think you'd want Brandon Drury to play a lot. You traded the Yankees with the Yankees and Jay Happ for him, so I think if you're the Blue Jays, you probably want Drury to get a lot of playing time at third base. Galvis is kind of a stopgap guy for guys like Bo Bichette, who's also a top prospect that could make his major league debut at some point this season. So I just think that if you're the Blue Jays, Lucas Gurriel plays second base. You might want to move. So that's the one right there where Lourdes, is a guy where he hit last year when he had the opportunity. But Lourdes Gurriel Jr., I think that they kind of look at him as a guy who can play everywhere. He can also play shortstop and third base, so he's probably more of their utility guy. So maybe you move Drury over to second base and put Vlad there at third base. Justin Smoke continues his resurgence in Toronto. I think he's going to continue to have a good season here. Kevin Pillar is a guy who could get traded. You're looking at some trade bait out there. I think you have Brian McKinney and Anthony Alford are guys that they probably want to give time to at some point. And Billy, that's it, Brian. It's Billy McKinney, of course, a former Yankee, Billy McKinney. So Pilar could be on the move at some point. Teoscar Hernandez and Randall Grichuk, while they aren't good enough probably to hold down roles consistently, they both can hit for power. They both have pop. Teoscar Hernandez has a little bit more speed, but the averages aren't there for either one of those guys. So I think Billy McKinney actually might be the best out of those three, Grichuk, Hernandez, and McKinney. So we'll see if he gets an opportunity here. I'd like to see what he can do in a starting role. Danny Jansen, good pitcher catcher behind the plate, young catcher. Candice Morales at DH. So it's an all-right offense when you're playing in Toronto and Rogers Center. You're going to get a lot of home runs. So like guys like Grichuk, who aren't going to hit high for average, are going to hit a lot of home runs against the Yankees and Red Sox and Rays, but and of course Orioles. But I just don't see this team racking up enough wins. The rotation is weak. Stroman could be traded. Aaron Sanchez could be traded, and then Matt Schumacher, Clayton Richard behind him, Ryan Barucki, Clay Buchholz. So there's some good guys. Like Clay Buchholz had a resurgence last year in Arizona. Maybe he can be a sneaky good pickup here for them late in the offseason. But unless Stroman comes out of the gate as an ace and then Aaron Sanchez gets back in the form like he was a couple of seasons ago, this rotation is probably not going to be good enough in such a tough division to facing lineups. I just mentioned three lineups, Yankees, Red Sox, and Rays, that I love. So that's going to be a tough division for these guys to pitch against. And I'm not sure this offense has the firepower enough to win enough of these division games to really be in it. So I don't like the Blue Jays that much to be in this division. But I expect them to be hovering around 500, though. I think that they can hover around 500, but I think ultimately they'll probably finish 3 or 4, if not 5 games below 500. Maybe even worse, because if you look at last year's standings, they were a good 16 games under 500, and not good. Not good. When I look at the bullpen, Ken Giles is okay, but beyond that, Joe Biagini, Ryan Tepera, like they're okay. There's nothing right home about. David Paulino's a nice young player they got from Houston along with Ken Giles, so that could be good out of the bullpen, but it's just not enough here for me. I think it's actually kind of generous for me to say 5 games under 500. It'd probably be more like 10 to 15, so we'll see if that happens, but I like this team a little bit more than maybe the consensus. And because of the division, it's probably going to be hard for them ultimately to get what they need to get enough wins to me. That maybe that's why they're probably going to be worse than I'm saying they're going to be, because the division is going to be so hard for them to get wins compared to other teams in other divisions. So that's why the Blue Jays will probably be worse in the 5 games that I'm predicting under 500. But I'm going to stick with it. 5 games under 500 for this team. Team is going to be really, really, really under 500. Is the Baltimore Orioles. They stink, man. This is not even a good team. Like, I try to stay positive on every single team. So here's the positivity. You have Jonathan VR, who's having a resurgence at the second half of last year. So he's going to have a really good time at stealing bases and being a nuisance for some of these guys that are at the top of the divisions. Like you're going to have to Chris Sale and all these other guys that, worry about if VR gets on base against you. But he could be a trade bait too. So there's that. Cedric Mullins could actually have a decent season in center field. I kind of like what he could bring. He could be a breakout player that surprises some people. Trey Mancini. Normally I would like Trey Mancini, but he kind of let me down last year. Not as good of a resurgence. We don't have as many good hitters around you, like Manny Machado's and stuff like that. Like and a good Chris Davis or Mike Trout hitting well. Maybe you don't hit as well, so that's why he might be a little overrated from his performance a couple seasons ago. I think it's interesting that they got Dwight Smith Jr., former Toronto Blue Jay prospect. He could be something in the outfield with Joey Rickard out there and maybe platooning a little bit, both getting time. So, they're okay. Chris Davis, one of the worst seasons last year. They're still on the books of his contract for a decent amount of time and a lot of money, not to mention that 168 with only 16 home runs for a guy like that. Nah, that's really bad. Maybe he'll have a better year, but that's just really, really bad. Trumbo is probably trade bait at some point. If he can have a decent year, I think that's the best case scenario for this team is if Trumbo gets out to a good start, maybe they can trade him. And then you have the left side of the infield that has guys that I'm like, really? Like, who are these guys? I love to see Rio Ruiz get a chance. But right now you have Richie Martin starting at shortstop. Getting his major league debut. So a young player, that's the positive there. Minor leagues, okay, didn't hit for power, but hit for average last season in Double-A. So he hit 300 in Double-A, but love to see him in Triple-A first, but guess not. And then Renato Nunez, who played in the last 3 seasons, but only played really had a big stint, a big service, a big sample size. There we go. Last year and only had 258, 8 home runs. But like I said, I'd like to see Rio Ruiz get an opportunity at third base to show what he has. Pitching rotation, it's not great. Dylan Bundy was really bad last year ERA-wise. The strikeouts are always going to be there, but hopefully those numbers, the ERA and the WHIP can improve. That's going to be much needed. Andrew Kastner, I think Alex Cobb will be better after having a spring trainer under his belt, but David Hess and Mike Wright aren't great at the 4 and 5. This is a team that's going to get shelled and not going to have any offense really to write home about at all. That's going to be enough to beat these teams in this division. So this is going to be a really bad team. Will they have more than 47 wins that they had last year? I think they'll get to 52. That's where I'll put them at. 52. That's actually pretty impressive. Like that 47 is really bad. Like that's like not historically bad per se, but that's like it's getting there. Especially in the modern era. I'll give them 52 wins this year. Just not a good baseball team. Bullpen, Michael Givens, Richard Blyre, Nathan Carnes in the bullpen as well. Like, these are guys that probably could get traded at some point. So it's Miguel Castro. So I think if you're the Orioles right now, if you're an Orioles fan, you're probably like, what can Richie Martin get out of us? What could Rio Ruiz get out of us? I think Austin Hayes should get some time at some point in the outfield. He's looked really good in spring training, so that's a guy that you were looking forward to getting something out of. You want Dylan Bundy to turn things around, but past that, you're probably looking at what other young guys can we get for players this season who are going to have an opportunity to get off to hot starts and be trade bait. And what young guys can we get for a Trumbo, get for a Michael Givens, maybe even get for a Dylan Bundy. Who knows what they're willing to trade? It could be anything. Get for Jonathan VR. So that's where you are with the Baltimore Orioles. Of course, if you want to hear my MVP Cy Young picks, that will be the last podcast that I'll do. I'll give you my wild card team. So the Red Sox, I have them in second place. Do I have them as a wild card? Of course, I'll give you all those things in my World Series prediction in the last podcast. And you can find all those on youtube.com/team1045. Click on the Sittin Sportside podcast playlist. You can also get there to that position from our 1045theteam.com page. You just got to click on podcast tabs and then click on the Sittin Sportside podcast. I appreciate you guys listening to this. This is the third one that we've done here, and I'll do 3 more. And, of course, also on that list of our podcast, there's a fantasy baseball, all the things you need there if you are drafting this weekend or possibly before the next Thursday. Maybe you're drafting Monday or Tuesday as well. So I really look. Maybe if you're drafting afterwards, still listen to those. If you're drafting next weekend, even though the season still starts next Thursday, still check out those podcasts. I appreciate it. If you want to tweet at me for anything, any opinions, questions you may have, at EricH1045. Make sure you tune in every Sunday for the Sittin Sportside Sunday beginning on March 31st. It's going to be a great time, an hour show that I will be doing on 104.5 The Team. So I really appreciate you guys tuning into that. That's brought to you by DeAndre's Pizza. Find everything out that you need to know about DeAndre's Pizza at www.deandrespizza.com. Thank you for listening once again. I'm Eric Hanneman. Thank you for Sittin Sportside right here on 104.5 The Team.